Grove Unleashed.
Welcome to Grove Unleashed. I am State Representative Seth Grove. Joining me, as always, the Anders and the Chuck. Gentlemen, good morning.
I think you're also forgetting my other nickname. We were talking about this yesterday. I'm also the best shot in the office. And the other day, you were trying to take that away from me, and I'm not having it. I'm simply not having it.
We go back to talking about the cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
Okay, this is true. The cheeseburgers is worth talking about. Is it Thailand?
Yeah, so Thailand has the Burger King out in Thailand. It has a burger that is just 20 slices of cheese with 2 buns, and that's it. Now, apparently you said that they also have one where it's just 20 patties as well.
I have heard that there is one that is 20 patties. I've seen pictures of it. I'm assuming it's also Thailand because it was the picture I saw was sitting next to the one piled in cheese.
So you had the great idea.
I was just going to say, you get both, and then you have 2 10-patty cheeseburgers.
I
between
agree
the two
with
of
this.
them.
I
And
concur.
it seemed to me it's a little more manageable to eat than 20 patties.
Well, my cousin
Even the
had-
cheese one looked a little egregious.
Yeah, it just kind of looks like a block cheese. I mean, if it was like a good cheese, like anything other than American, just simple American.
It's too much
I don't want to
cheese.
eat a block of American cheese.
Right, it's too
I'd
much
eat a
cheese.
block of mozzarella.
Right.
I'd eat a block of Parmesan. That one
know.
might hurt, but any day. But when my cousin had her first kid, it was a little baby. It was the first time I met him. Was at
Most
my-
kids are when they have
try
their
to
first
feed,
kid.
Did you try to feed baby some cheese? Is that what you tried to do?
Let me cook. So, so it was actually at my great grandfather's funeral. My first time meeting this baby, and at that point, I saw this meme going around. I'm like, you know what? I want to try it. So I took a slice of cheese from the charcuterie board, and I just tossed it on his head. He started crying. I thought it was the funniest thing ever. My brother found it hilarious. Everyone else in my family though was kind of mad.
You done went too far at a funeral, man.
I did. I
If
mean,
it had not been a funeral, it probably would have been okay.
Right. Wow. How old were you?
it was a couple years ago.
A couple. It was a couple last year. A couple last year.
You remember that one time a long time ago, yesterday?
Yesterday. Oh man. Speaking of dumb things that happen, we still don't have a budget.
Well, at least we're starting to talk about it. I mean, the media is saying that we don't have a budget.
Right.
And
Josh Shapiro's websites say we don't have a budget.
But I heard,
You know who says we don't have we're not in a budget impasse? The majority leader of the House, Matt Bradford, says we're not at an impasse. I don't know what we are then. There's no budget. I don't know what that is.
it'd be nice to see when the bills come due and there's no money to pay them.
No.
If they find out that they have a budget impasse, then
Right.
because they're running out of funds pretty quick, aren't they?
Yeah, so we maintain caucus reserves to utilize them at this point when we don't have a budget to make sure we can fund our employees and keep operations up and running. That way, it doesn't provide an advantage to the governor in budget negotiations and stuff. So we're the most prudent. So we have the lower cost, more reserves than the other 3 caucuses. So we're in good financial shape. The others probably not so much. But it's really interesting because we have a budget impasse. Obviously, Josh Shapiro, the governor, was out there talking about how much he wanted Lifeline Scholarship. It was a campaign plank. Went on Fox News, all of God's children, whole 9 yards, right? And then he gets a letter from AFSCME and SEIU saying they oppose Lifeline Scholarships. AFSCME and SEIU are state employee unions, right? They're not school teacher unions. They're something totally different. Now, the contracts for state employees are up, and we just found out it's a 20.25% pay increase over the next 4 years. It's huge. And what's it going to do is the non-union supervisors and management staff are actually going to make less than the line workers, which kind of hurts
So
your morale.
what
and
kind of
stuff.
workers are included in these unions?
So
Who do
it's
these unions
state
represent?
employees, those
Okay.
who aren't in management, aren't in supervisory positions, who operate state government on a day-to-day basis, right?
Gotcha. So PennDOT workers.
Yeah, they're
Department
part
of
of
Revenue,
it. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, that's who we're talking about.
Gotcha.
Now, it's interesting because as these negotiations are happening, Josh walks back Lifeline scholarships. Was there an impact? Because these are behind the door. These are behind the scenes. Nobody knows what the discussion is with these. Did the unions cut a deal with Josh for maybe they wanted 30% pay raises? Did they cut a deal for Josh to walk it back? Lifeline scholarships? Like, what's the connection all of a sudden? And then they normally don't get involved in school matters, like at all. It's not
Nor
their,
should they.
Right,
They're
it's
a
not
union
their,
who
it's not
represent
their
people
purview.
paid by taxpayer dollars.
So you have state employee unions weighing in on an education policy while these negotiations are going on. Like, what happened? What was there a deal struck between the Shapiro administration and the unions over Lifeline scholarship? It's something that they need to address because it's very ironic, coincidental that you have this connection between all of a sudden Josh Shapiro. And it's frustrating for us, right? So governor cuts this deal, hands us the bill during budget negotiations. So as state agencies aren't spending all their money, I tweet out the Act 146 waivers. That is state agencies keeping prior year funds alive. They ask for more money because they don't have enough, but they don't spend all their money for years on end. And then we get hit with these contracts. So it's all... to me, it's bad governance. I think the General Assembly should actually ratify these as well because the governor's going to be asking us for the money. It's either that or the governor needs to not ask for increases in his GGO. If you want this size, you better make sure you can pay for it over the life of the contract.
That seems like a huge increase at one time without some kind of oversight or some kind of looking into it. This is money that's going to have to be funded by the legislature in the future, right? And so he's writing a check that we're going to have to cash.
The taxpayers are going to have to cash. The taxpayers. Ultimately, they're responsible to pay this, and he better have it in those GGO lines every single year.
What is that GGO
So
line?
it's general government operation. That's where the pizza parties, agency slush funds, and how they pay their employees come from. And like I said, I tweet the Act 146. Act 146 allowed the budget secretary to basically waive the provisions of lapsing dollars back into the general fund at the end of the fiscal year. So they create these continuing appropriations that allow state agencies to use this unspent dollars for however they want for as long as they want. You know, there's no tie back to anything. It's supposed to be for construction, litigation, something else. There was a third thing.
Pizza parties.
Yeah.
But
now
they're supposed
they
to be
can.
used for one-time expenditures, not recurring expenditures.
Right. They're supposed to be for longer-term issues. Like litigation can take years. Construction can take years. It's for those longer-term perspectives. What they do is allow this money just as a continuing basis to use however they want. And they use, again, I'm nerding out on accounting stuff, they use first in, first out. So they use their new money first instead of using last in, first out, which means you use the old money first and then expend that until you need to draw into your new stuff. It's just bad accounting practice through these state agencies. It's bad management, and the money should be returned to the taxpayers outside of long-term contractual obligations. And
Is
stuff.
it bad management or is it something more nefarious?
It's them deliberately keeping this money for as long as they want for whatever they want. It allows the secretaries to come up and create new programs, the administration create new programs off money because they waive all of the restrictions from those dollars. It's a real shame. It's great. It's great for the executive branch. Not great for taxpayers because every single time, every single year, these same entities come back and ask for more of your money.
And there's no oversight at all.
No. We tried to bring it in. They're just like, oh, well, we just need the money. I had a back and forth with Cindy Dunn, who's DCNR secretary, 8 years under the Wolf administration, at least probably another 4 under the Shapiro administration. And I asked her, I'm like, why do you need to waive these dollars and keep them? She's like, oh, it's cash flow. If we don't, I'm like, that's not true. And she's like, well, I'm like, you draw down money. Treasury needs cash flow. You draw your money from Treasury. Treasury needs cash flow. I'm like, do you know how I know that? That's how my office operates. I'm like, no offense, man. I'm sorry. You've been here for 8 years. You should know how this stuff works. And her budget person sitting there is shaking her head, no, he's right. So it's not cash flow. They don't need it to make sure they can have money there to pay. That's a treasury issue. It's
Was that one of those? We'll have to circle back to that one.
right. They have no answer outside of they feel it's their money, and that's the problem with government, right? It's our money. They view it as our money, whether it's school districts, whether it's counties, whether it's townships, whether it's boroughs. They all view it's our money. It's not. It's the taxpayers' money, and you should be fiscally prudent with those expenditures moving forward.
Most definitely. Going back to the unions, and this might be a little bit of a hot take on my part. I think lobbyists get a bad rap in politics, for the most part. My grandparents have always said we need to get lobbyists out of DC. I'm like, in reality, lobbyists are just a group of people who, people donate money to them because it's a cause that they believe in, right? Like lobbying groups
So they
are
get,
typically
they
representative of their
right.
people.
They get contracts to go advocate on behalf of whatever.
Exactly.
And generally, whether you know this or not, you're represented by some lobbying group in Harrisburg and DC.
Yeah. And
pick,
I mean, look
pick a
at the NRA,
demographic,
right?
pick a job, pick an industry. There's someone lobbying on your behalf, whether you realize it or not. And the big thing is how does that? It's that interaction. As legislators, as public servant, you need to understand they're coming at from a perspective. They're coming from a perspective on behalf of their clients, and you need to understand that because sometimes they're not always right.
Yeah.
Like and honesty is a big thing too. You can't give anybody bad information or lie to them and stuff like that. It just throws the entire system out of whack.
It also doesn't mean just because they're funded well that they are the voice of the people.
Yeah.
They might be the voice of one or two very well funded people, and that's the nature of the beast. And you have to keep that in mind when you're dealing with them.
Yeah. And I mean, don't get me wrong. Like there are definitely lobbying groups out there that aren't great, right? But as a general statement, they are representative of a group by people who decide
protection.
And it's by people who choose to use them, right? For example, the NRA. NRA members are the ones who choose to continue that membership and continue those lobbying efforts. Yeah. However, unions, on the other hand, I don't think they get bad enough of a rap when it comes to this.
Unions are sometimes taking people's money for causes that they do not support just because they are members
and they have
of the
no
union.
choice in the matter.
And going back, I mean, why is ASME and SEIU getting involved in a school policy issue? They don't represent.
And look at teachers' unions too.
That arena, you know, PSEA, AFT, some of the other teacher unions. Okay, you understand why they weigh in education stuff, but I mean, it could be part of the clear coalition. Attack on one is attack on all and stuff like that. But then you have, in the same line, you have the head of the Philly building trades came out in support of Lifeline scholarships because he realizes the detrimental impact of failing schools in his area in Philadelphia and how important it is to get these kids educational success so they can move forward in life. And that's a unique thing as an African American. He gets it.
As do most people. And it seems like a lot of Democrats, if you talk to them behind closed doors, they are also in support of Lifeline scholarships. But it is these teachers' unions who don't represent students. They represent teachers who are pushing against these Lifeline scholarships.
Right.
And most of the time it's the misrepresentation in some of the press by some of these lobbyists that we're talking about that's saying that any money that goes to a Lifeline scholarship or any other kind of funding is just money that's being taken away from public education. And
Which in
that's
Pennsylvania,
that's just not true.
No. And education's education. Like at the end of the day, who cares where that kid goes to school as long as they're being successful? If they feel they're successful in a traditional public school, great. If the parents in that child feel they're not successful there and they want to go to some other entity where they feel they're going to be successful, great. That's what you want. That's what education is about. It's about succeeding and finding a place where you are comfortable at getting a great education and become a productive member of society. And you have the ability to reach your full potential in life. Some kids aren't getting that in these failing schools.
And Democrats typically think that just throwing more money is always a solution when it comes to many problems, but especially education. Let's just throw more money. Let's just throw money.
We
throw
put a
more money.
lot of money into public schools, K through 12, under the Wolf administration. Every year it's historic, right? Historic levels of funding every single year, but it's
including
not
this
enough.
year.
Right?
But
And
look at nationwide too, right? Who spends the most on their kids or students? Inner city Baltimore, inner city DC. Who has some of the worst testing grades?
Yeah,
Inner
look
city
at
Baltimore,
what happened in
inner
Baltimore.
city DC.
No students in some of their schools, like 27 schools in Baltimore, had 0 students proficient in math.
Yeah.
0.
Yeah.
It's obvious that throwing money at these issues is not the solution.
Yeah, money's never been the solution to anything. It's about focusing on improving the outcomes and doing right by these kids, and it just doesn't happen. I mean, listen, the House Democrat leadership's on a tour of schools. They're like, we're talking about making students successful. They're complaining about boilers.
Yeah.
Like literally, they're showing a boiler.
Or wanting them to put solar panels on top of the roofs or something like that. Yeah.
Which is also the irony about the House Democrats. They complain about these schools that are falling down, asbestos filled, and then they want to put solar panels on top of them, adding more weight to the roof on schools that supposedly
If you didn't
are going
get
to fall down.
a degree in math or didn't pass math, you'll never be an engineer, and you'll never understand why that won't work.
Right. I found the irony in that, and tremendous. But again, we'll just throw money at everything everywhere. I mean, should schools be spending money on solar panels, right? You obviously have gaps in education that need filled. How are solar panels going to help you reach those gaps?
But we'll be green, man.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
They're going to be green, using a lot of taxpayer green. Right.
I just want to know who's paying for the removal of toxic solar panels, because they're toxic. And then when they go bad, who does remediation? Because now you're going to have toxic solar panels on top of your toxic schools.
Well, I can tell you who's going to pay for it. Once again, taxpayer dollars.
Taxpayers pay to put them up, pay them to take them down.
Yep.
And probably taking them down and disposing of them is going to cost more than putting them up originally. And going to eat up. I mean, what's the cost savings? Like they always say there's cost savings in doing it. Do they calculate remediation and getting rid of them?
I'd assume not.
Right.
Yeah.
I got some breaking news.
Oh.
All right. Breaking news.
Breaking news. House Democrat legislator calls on governor and colleagues to support school choice in the state budget. It's 102 votes.
Who was that?
That's Amen Brown out of Philadelphia.
That's 102.
That's 102.
Any chance we're going to come back?
Probably not, because it gives 102 for what the Democrats generally don't want to do. If you're out there telling people I support school choice, like, be honest. Just either go vote for it, like you said you do, and maybe I don't know what you tell your constituents, right? Do you say I'm actually for this, or do you like just fluff it over and just say, well, you know, we need to talk about all the education.
If you were really for it, as a House Democrat, you'd be calling your leader and saying, let's get back in and vote and get this thing done before
let's
the
get it
school year
done.
starts.
Let's get
Look
it
at that.
done.
Representative Grove Unleashed. Look at us
Breaking
solving
news.
the budget impasse on the podcast.
All right.
Grove Unleashed.